Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is the Asus CUBE. You can probably tell where it gets its name because it's a cube. It's about 5 inches square. And it's a Google TV box, which means that you can plug it into a television and use it to run applications on your TV, search for video, surf the web, do all sorts of other things. It's based on the Google Android operating system, and the latest version of Google TV is sort of based on Android 3.2. That doesn't mean you can play all sorts of Android games or all sorts of Android apps, but ones that are available for Google TV, which is a smaller subset, do run. And then Asus has also created a custom user interface that it calls the CUBE user interface, which we'll get to in a while once we plug this guy in. On the back, you'll notice that there's an Ethernet port, USB, 2 HDMIs, and a little guy that looks like a headphone jack, but is actually an IR blaster port. One more USB port on the side here, and that's about it, and that's about all it comes with. It doesn't even include an HDMI cable in the package. There's no component, nothing else. It's pretty simple. If your TV doesn't have HDMI, you're not going to be able to use this unless you have some sort of special adapter. The reason there's 2 HDMI ports is you can actually plug run one from your cable or satellite box into the input, and then run the other one, the output, to your TV, and that way you have a single unified experience for controlling your broadcast programming and your internet programming and other things. And when you search for video, you can use the Primetime app, for instance, to search for video across your local cable provider and Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, other sources. So that's pretty much it for the box itself. It's a little bit large for something that you're going to stick by the TV, but fortunately it's also reasonably attractive. The remote control is also one of the most special features of this particular device. As you can see, it's a multifunction remote with a keyboard and sort of more standard remote functions here. But it actually has a whole bunch of different functions. So there's a dedicated Netflix key, for instance, down here. We've got your volume and channel buttons, your play, pause, rewind, and so forth. So those are pretty standard functions, but then there's also some Android-esque functions, like a home button, a back button, a guide, which brings up your unified program guides, and a microphone button, which turns this into a, well, basically a handheld microphone for voice controls. I'll get to that in a little bit too. Up here there's a area that has 2 purposes. You can use it as sort of a touchpad, or if you look close you'll see up, down, right, left buttons, and an OK button. So for standard Android apps or Google TV apps that are designed to work with the remote control, you'll sort of click down, click up, sort of navigate your way through, and then click OK when you want to select something. I find that that does not work very well on this remote control because those buttons are sort of just little grooves built into this space here. So you don't feel them as much as you would feel one of these buttons. And so I often wind up clicking OK when I meant to click down, or clicking down when I meant to click OK, and so forth. Fortunately, it's not the only way to use this. You can also tap this little mouse cursor button, turn it into a sort of touchpad, so then you can just drag your finger across it and tap and use it much the way that you would use a touchpad on a laptop. And what that lets you do is interact with applications that were not necessarily designed for the TV interface. So websites that works really nicely on, or certain games, other things where you might want to use a mouse instead of clicking to select different areas on the screen. You can also tap the microphone button for what's probably my favorite function, which is the voice search and voice actions. So you can click the microphone, say the name of a program that you're looking for, and your Google TV box, your Asus CUBE box, will search for that program. Click it again, say the name of a application that you want to launch, say Amazon Video, it'll launch the Amazon Video app. It's, in a lot of cases, I think, faster than manually searching for it, and we'll get to that once we take a quick look at the Google TV user interface. The keyboard is a full QWERTY keyboard with pretty much any key that you could possibly need, including some up and down buttons, OK button, and so forth, so you don't have to constantly flip back and forth. If you're using the keyboard, you can sort of navigate through the user interface this way, and then you can also type things out using your thumbs. It's sort of like a phone keyboard. It's not something you're probably going to want to type the Great American Novel on, but it is something that you can use to enter usernames and passwords when required, maybe put the URL for a website, and do some other sort of short typing. One thing I don't love about this keyboard is that on a smartphone keyboard, if you want to hit capital H, you just hit Shift and then capital H. Here you have to hold down Shift and type capital, or hit the H button at the same time. Or if you want to do the @ symbol or number sign, hold down function and then type it. So what that means is that you can't really type with one hand, and it means that you're probably going to have to look down at your hands as you're typing. So it can take a while to enter text, which is why I think it's really only good for short amounts of text. But it's really nice to have a keyboard, so you don't necessarily have to plug one in. If you wanted to, you could plug in a USB keyboard or a wireless keyboard into one of the USB ports here. But it's not something that's required because of this remote control. So you know, basic clicking functionality is a little hit or miss. Voice functionality is great. These buttons work just fine. There's some inconsistency, though, I think, in how the buttons work in different apps. We'll get to that in a moment. Keyboard, it's better than not having a keyboard, let's say. There's a little bit of an infrared jack here and infrared here, so you do need to make sure that you place this in a position where you can point the remote at it. The remote also has sort of built-in motion sensors, so if you have a game that takes advantage of that, and there aren't a lot of them available for Google TV yet, but there may be some more soon, you can actually use it to control games the way that you would tilt a tablet or phone to play certain games. So that's a look at the hardware. Let's go ahead and take a look at the software user interface. Okay, so now you can see another reason why it's called the Asus CUBE is because it has this CUBE-style user interface on the home screen. That's something that helps set it apart from most Google TV devices, which look more like this. So you do have access to your full list of applications, and you can navigate it the way that you would on another device. But the CUBE lets you sift through TV and movies, games, social, sports, music, etc. And so you can get access to some of your favorite apps more quickly. Now, since this doesn't take up the full user interface, as you can see here, we've got lots of space around the sides. You can put widgets on the home screen. Most of the widgets that are available right now, I'd say, are of limited utility, but if you really wanted to, you can hit the menu button, customize home widgets, add a widget, and then say add a clock or a music player. Just go ahead and add a quick clock. We're done. And now there's a clock on your home screen. To get rid of that, go back into the same menu. Select it, remove, and exit, and clock is gone. So that's one thing that you can do here. Another thing is you can go into the Chrome web browser and do a little web surfing. So let's bring up There's no dedicated button for period, for instance, so you have to hit function, which always takes me a moment. So the web browser works pretty well, and you can use the touchpad to move around if you wanted to click on something like the Asus CUBE review. You can use the buttons to scroll up and down. So it's nice to have the full Google Chrome web browser available to you. You also have access to the Google Play Store, which is sort of, well, it's nice to have. You probably have more apps available for this than you do for most devices that you can use with your TV. But the user interface really pretty clearly was designed more for phones. So for instance, say I wanted to search for tune in radio app. It's not actually available for this device. It's there's a web app which works pretty well, but instead you get a list of other sort of apps that may or may not be related. So once you do that, you can say click on an app that you want to install. You can open it from here, you can uninstall it. Let's find one that I don't actually already have installed. Let's say Zimbabwe Radio. So here we've got a bunch of screenshots for an application that looked like they were designed for a phone, not for a TV. It's kind of difficult to see what's highlighted, but once you notice what's going on here, you can click the install button, or again, you can use the mouse if you'd rather do that, and click install. Then you get this pop-up that really just isn't well formatted for TV. You can click accept and download. You get this, which sort of gets in the way and looks much better on a phone or a tablet. And then you have a choice of whether you'd like to set a category. So we'll say that this is a music application. So, you can install applications, but there aren't really as many available as you might like, and the user interface is a little less than perfect. For instance, if we go back to the home screen, let's click on games, and you'll see just how few games there are available. So top free games, that sounds promising. What about top new free games? Well, there just aren't really that many available. There's one. So let's say we want to play arcade and action games. Let's take a complete look at the list of arcade and action games available for Google TV. There's 55. So you can see there's sort of limited selection of games available, for instance. But what you're most likely to do is probably watch TV. So let's say we want to go and watch a little Netflix. There's a dedicated Netflix button, so that should work pretty well. And for the most part, it does. It can take a little while sometimes to launch the Netflix application. And it seems a little bit weird that you have sort of two different loading screens. But once it's up and running, it works pretty nicely. So let's pick a video here. And we've got, Iron Sky playing on the TV. We can press the pause button, we can press play, we can rewind a little bit or fast forward. And things work pretty well. Let's press stop and it takes us back to the previous menu, and let's go try a different application. So now let's try Amazon Instant Video. Now we've got a completely different user interface, which makes sense, it's a different app. But if we go into my video library and try to watch something, you'll notice that, well, I'll have to talk you through it, but some of the controls are also going to be a little bit different. So once a video is playing, and again it can take a little while for it to start, but once you get it playing it should look pretty good. Now let's go ahead and hit the fast forward button again. And it says that it's fast forwarding. If you see the timeline it says it's fast forwarding, but you don't actually skip ahead until you press play again and stop the fast forward. Now we're skipped ahead. So that's sort of weird. Pause works just fine. Stop doesn't do anything other than bring up this menu. And so the user interface is a little bit disjointed, if you ask me. Let's go back to the home screen here, and now I'm going to show you the voice controls. Amazon. So you might think that I'm bringing up the Amazon application, but in fact what it's going to do now is search for videos with the name Amazon in them. So there's a little bit of a learning curve, I think, to figuring out how to use the voice actions in voice search. Amazon.com. In this case, it's going to bring up the website using the browser. I feel the need to defend Comcast here by saying that I actually have a pretty fast internet connection, but it's being a little bit iffy, even though the Cube is right next to the router at the moment, for some reason. Amazon Video. So it's a pretty neat feature. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than you might like, but it's nice to have the voice actions, but you do need to learn exactly what it is that you want to do with them. You do, as I mentioned, then also have to get used to, which controls serve what functions in which video apps. So the inconsistent user interface takes a little getting used to when you've got all these different apps for video, so Amazon, Netflix, HBO Go, Google Play Movies, and so forth. So it's nice that there are applications on here like the Primetime app, which let you search for content across all of your different sources. And you'll notice there it took so long to open that sometimes I'll wind up clicking extra buttons and you wind up going back when you didn't mean to go back, which can be kind of annoying. So anyways, you have this application called Primetime that lets you search for content across all of these different places, but once you actually get the application up and running and you're watching Django Unchained or Argo or Zero Dark 30, then you have to figure out, wait, does the stop button stop the video? Does it return me to the previous menu? Does it do nothing? Etc. So you have to figure out, you know, is this the sort of thing for $140 that's going to make my life better? Personally, I have a home theater PC which is plugged into the television and does almost all of these functions better. And it also has a Hulu application. There's no Hulu Plus application, there's no regular Hulu application available for here, for Google TV. So while there's a lot of content that you can access, and if you want to combine your cable or satellite program with what's available online, Google TV as a platform is kind of a neat way to do it, but the controls can be a little bit sluggish, the controls can be a little bit user inconsistent. It can take a little while to find what you're looking for, and then once you're playing it, it can take a while to figure out how to stop it, how to fast forward, etc. So there's a little bit of a learning curve, I think, which is unfortunate, because the idea of Google TV is really great. The Asus CUBE is adequate Google TV player. I'm not entirely sold on the need for this Cube user interface. I'm not entirely sold on the built-in keyboard on this remote, but it's nice that it has one. It's nice that it has the mouse pointer option. It's nice that it has the motion controls and the voice controls. So all told, I'm not sure that the Asus CUBE with Google TV is something that fits into my particular needs, but if you're looking for a device that is really meant for use with a TV, it might make more sense than, say, an Android TV stick or something else that you would plug into your TV that really is meant to run a version of Android that's clearly not designed for a TV. But it would be nice if there were more apps available. It would be nice if they were a little easier to control, and it might be nice if it had a slightly faster processor. I'm not quite sure if that would help things launch immediately when you press the button, but it is a little annoying that sometimes you press the button and you wait. I just pressed the button now. Okay, we're done waiting. So that's a quick look at the Asus CUBE with Google TV, which is a Google TV set-top box that's available for about $140. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing. And we're still waiting for it to load. I give up.